I've been dealing, shedding skin till I make my way up. I'm out here stepping, repping, flow electric, time for the wake up. Got rid of them leeches, weakness, ain't no breaching, God is beside us. Still ride with a Glock in the fleece, I'ma up my piece if you trying to divide us. Still count my blessings, lessons, my confessions, go to the high up. These niggas ain't come from the cars, we different in breed, could never deny us. I'm removing the scales from my eyes, I see through the lies, they pop, piper. Warfare with spiritual forces, fighting the demons, really for lifers. Karma, with your energy harness. If I'm back in the corner, I might get the clicking until I just feel a nirvana. I see blood in the water, homies are gone, he couldn't see the piranhas. Got it hot as Nevada, I'm from the bottom, niggas on treacherous timing. They'll pop your melon in front of those seeds over that beef and broccoli. He poked his chest, now he can't breathe over that ego popping.
Alrighty, welcome back into Alu 2 Productions. This is Win or Lose Chiefs News Podcast Edition, Week 3 recap and Week 4 preview. I am Alex Liu, and this is the podcast version of my blog that I started last year, Win or Lose Chiefs News on WordPress.com. I will leave a link to my blog in the description below. Thank you so much for tuning back in. If you've watched any of my other Chiefs podcasts recapping weeks 1 and 2 so far in the 2025 season, or if you've seen any of the other videos on my channel, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, comment, share, follow me on Instagram, and I would really appreciate your support. So it is Friday, September 26th. It has been an extremely busy work week, so I was not able to get around to finally sitting down and talking about my thoughts from the Chiefs-Giants game last Sunday night. The first Chiefs win of the 2025 season, and there's a lot of firsts. We should think about that for a second. This is the first winning edition of Win or Lose Chiefs News podcast for the blog. It's nothing new. Last year started off 9-0. I did put out my blog post recapping week 3 and the win last Sunday night on Monday. And that was a pretty quick recap. Nothing too in-depth or too long, but a nice recap and just looking forward to week 4's matchup against the Ravens. But I did want to, better late than never, finally get to some of my thoughts on the game and looking forward to week 4 against the Ravens. I know that at this point, most people have moved on from week 3, and I mean, week 4 has already started. Last night was Thursday Night Football between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Yeah, we're gonna do this anyway. I need to just kind of talk through some things, and I didn't want to start off the season just with podcast episodes from the games that we've lost. It's nice to finally sit back and reflect on a win. We're going to get into it. It wasn't a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely think that despite a rough start and a really, really rough second quarter, to put it lightly, again, like some of the positives taken away from weeks 1 and 2, it was good to see the Chiefs finish off last Sunday with a lot more progress and momentum and some positives to take away from the things that they did do well in the second half to finish off the game. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to try my best to keep my podcasts to about an hour, just because if you ask anybody in my family or any of my friends who know that I'm just a crazy diehard Chiefs fan, I can literally, probably like a lot of Chiefs fans out there who just obsess over the Chiefs, I could probably talk about them for hours on end. So we're going to try to keep this concise, especially since at this point we are, 5 days removed from the win on Sunday night. But a win is a win. Let's just say that first and foremost. A win is a win. Got our first win of the season, got into the win column. And I think more importantly, it was a good first win after, this season starting off 0-2. But really, when you date back to the Super Bowl, especially after the kind of year that we had last year and what we were chasing with the three-peat, having a 3-game losing streak really since February, I thought that finally getting that much-needed win after just, I think, the mental space that the team and really the entire fan base has been in, and finding ourselves in this kind of unfamiliar territory of not just starting off 0-2, but just not seemingly not able to find a way to just string together a win. And I feel like Andy Reid and Mahomes, Kelsey, a lot of the leaders on the team, they always talk about how, and people take this lightly, but I think the true great minds in any professional sport will tell you and will say over and over that it's hard to win at the professional level in anything, and you can't take wins for granted, even if you do have a 15-2 season. A lot of people at first glance will just look at that and think, oh, yeah, it's so hard to win in the NFL, but yeah, there's teams that win 12, 13, 14 games a season, but it really is tough. Ugly win, I think ugly start, for sure. Definitely a lot of ugly in there in the first half. We're going to get into specifics here in a little bit, but I would say frustrating first quarter. Okay, so at the end of the first quarter, Chiefs up 3-0. They go into halftime leading 9-6. To take a step back, in reality, this was by no means an exciting game, really, for the rest of the NFL football world in terms of other fan bases. The Giants are not a good team. I'm just going to be brutally honest about that, and I think most people realize that. They're not a very good team. Russell Wilson has been washed up now for quite a while. So Giants have not been a good team. And I think while some people might argue in the NFL it's a week-to-week business, and the Giants did put up over 30 points in Dallas the week prior. Then again, that's also a divisional game and kind of just a weird game, and neither one of those teams really played great defense. A lot of scoring goes into overtime. The Giants are just not a good team. So a lot of people, I think, went into this game thinking, oh, Chiefs should win, no problem. This is a game for them to get in the win column, get back on track, however you want to put it. And I think some people would just find initial disappointment out of, oh, wow, we only beat them 22-9. But I think Travis Kelce said it, he'll take a win any way he can get it. And I think at this point, too, I liked what someone said on one of the KCSN podcasts this week, that the Chiefs are just kind of in a place where they have to survive these first 6 weeks without Rashee Rice, first and foremost. But ever since Xavier Worthy went down, and that really threw a wrench in their game planning around him, and they had to scramble on the fly for much of the week 1 game in Brazil against the Chargers. Then heading into week 2, you saw that they were definitely a lot more focused and maybe not quite on the same page, but I don't think that in the Eagles game there was really as much sloppiness, aside from continued penalties, especially in the area of Jawan Taylor. But really just in the Eagles game, it was another Butker missed kick, and then the Travis Kelce drop pass that got tipped up for an interception. I think when you look at this Giants game, it was a frustrating first 2 quarters because they couldn't punch the ball into the end zone. They had some really, really bad plays, like the 2 backwards/lateral passes that were intended for Pacheco. They just couldn't seem to get anything going. No momentum, no rhythm, just not really clicking. And a lot of this, unfortunately, things that you read out there, people are kind of putting this on Mahomes as if like he's not looking like his old self. He's not looking great. He's struggling to develop chemistry. I'm a firm believer that this isn't really it's not at all just on Mahomes. I actually think Mahomes is playing really good, all things considering. I don't think that he's had enough help surrounding him. At times there have been flashes. At times Juju has definitely stepped up. Like he made some great catches and runs after the catch last week against the Giants. I think Hollywood Brown, statistically, he's been providing production, but just not quite as much of a spark as I think we were hoping to see. And this kind of goes back to supporting the point that I think at this point, where certain guys are age-wise and in their careers, the assumption is that when Rice and Worthy come back, that we should be able to fire on all cylinders. Rice and Worthy also being younger, but them coming back from injuries of their own and things like that. It is it is hopeful and maybe wishful thinking, but I would like to think that with Rice being that primary target, able to work underneath in the intermediate routes, especially a lot of the very quick slants that they had success early on in the season last year running before Rice went down with injury. And now you have this emerging deep threat of Tyquan Thornton that no one really accounted for because he was so much lower on the depth chart behind some of these guys, but he's actually been the one to surprisingly step up and make a name for himself. And with his speed, and then we already know Worthy's fast, I think you add two of those guys to be able to stretch the field vertically and really make defenses respect this returning deep ball game that the Chiefs can definitely present to opposing defenses. And then I think you will be able to open up more for guys like Hollywood Brown, Kelsey, Juju. That's kind of where my head's at there. I think that so far what we've been seeing, and I think we saw it specifically in the first half of the Giants game, is that Mahomes is just not having a whole lot of help around him. It has taken a few, I would say a few plays, a few shots in each of these games for him to finally connect with Tyquan Thornton. So it's been a slow development, but I think we're going to see this continue to get better and better each week because we saw it even in the Chargers game. You know, he's able to hit, I'm pretty sure it was Thornton at the end of the first half that set up that, what was it, like a 58 or 59 yard field goal from Bucker, the one where they had to scramble onto the field as time was running down. But I can't remember if in the Chargers game if they hit on another one deep or not, but they definitely took some shots. And even though it didn't connect consistently really at all, but they were able to connect on one or two of them. Same thing against the Eagles. You know, they finally hit on that deep ball towards the end of the game. And then against the Giants, Mahomes was looking for it. He was looking for it, and they were trying. There were a couple times they're just not quite on the same page, but that chemistry is slowly building. So I think that's a huge, huge positive. Okay, so just to kind of take a step back again, just sort of recap a little bit. Ugly win, maybe not the most pretty, we'll say, but a win is a win. Certainly better than starting off 0-3. This was definitely a game the Chiefs needed to win, considering they're about to play the Ravens, and then they have to play the Lions and then the Commanders before the Raider game that I will be going to with my family. Super pumped about that. The Chiefs needed to win this game, no matter how it looked. For those people out there who continue to be unimpressed, bored of the Chiefs offense, unsatisfied with what they're seeing, the product on the field, so to speak. As a Chiefs fan, yeah, was it frustrating watching parts of that game? Like, I mean, I didn't know sometimes whether to laugh or whether to just continue to be annoyed and frustrated and really kind of angry at some points. Like, why can't they just get it together? It really could have been worse. I mean, the Chiefs lost at the Meadowlands, I think in 2016 or 27. I forget which year it was. It was somewhere around then. This was before Mahomes, when we still had Alex Smith, and we lost to the Giants, and they back then also were not a very good team that year. We lost to them 12-9. Okay? If we had won this game something like 10-9, 13-9, 22-17, I think at the same time it still would have been a win. I think there would have been way more concern heading into this Ravens game than the concerns that are still lingering and the concerns that we have taking away the negatives, the cons from that Giants game. Not a very good first half collectively. What was it, 3 field goals? Yeah, 3 field goals, leading 9-6. But in the second half, they really turned things around. They had 2 very quality, long, sustaining drives that both resulted in touchdowns. One of them had a really big catch by Tyquan Thornton. One play right after he also made another very good, what at least looked like a catch. And it was a good effort. It was a good catch until, not completing the process of the catch going to the turf. That's tough, but as a younger player, it's just one of those things where you just have to buckle down and find some way to hang on to that. There are some guys who will do things like try to kind of twist and contort their body a little bit to have their body take the brunt of the turf so that the ball isn't hitting the turf and allowing it to move. My wife made a really good point of that, it would have been cool if on the play before the big catch that Tyquan Thornton did secure, that if he was able to somehow, I think he dove forward, he kind of got the ball like this, if he could have kind of turned his body and maybe landed on his shoulder. But, the game, you're moving so fast. There are a lot of things to think about. It was a great effort. But, again, Mahomes showed a lot of trust in Thornton, going back to him pretty much on a very similar route and similar, basically the same result, just this time being a completed catch. Very next play goes back to him. So that was great to see. So those 2 long drives, that was key. And, we punched in 2 touchdowns. Going back to Butker, yeah, he missed an extra point in the second half after missing a makeable field goal in the first half. A way more makeable and shorter distance kick in the first half of the Giants game than the 58-yarder that at Arrowhead, he also probably could have and should have made. I don't really fault Butker as much for the missed extra point in the second half, and that's why we ended up with the weird final score, 22-9. Because Kareem Hunt, a veteran in this league, he should have known better. Post-touchdown celebration, I'm pretty sure he kind of did one of these, slitting the throat. The NFL has really cracked down on things like that. We saw Xavier Worthy last year on Christmas at Pittsburgh. He scored a touchdown and he did something like lift up his shirt, and that the NFL has a lot of rules around stuff like that. These guys should be more than aware of all of those rules and limitations with celebrating. Just on a very side note, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but I think it's very different for an older player, a long-time vet, and someone as accomplished as someone like Travis Kelce. When he broke Tony Gonzalez's record for, I'm pretty sure it's just for Chiefs tight ends, but most touchdown catches by a Chiefs tight end in franchise history. If I'm not mistaken, that was the record. When he also broke that in Pittsburgh in the same game last Christmas, we all expected him to kind of pay homage to Tony Gonzalez when he dunked on the goalpost. And Tony Gonzalez even tweeted something like he would pay that fine to the NFL for Kelce. Him doing that doesn't bother me as much. It's the guys doing, just the very kind of explicit like gestures and stuff like this stuff. I mean, we just don't need it. You're finally extending your lead, and it's looking like we're gonna win the ball game at that point, and we just don't need that. Just kind of little stupid stuff I would prefer not to see. But overall, defensively, the Chiefs defense continues to play really, really well. When you look at this game as a whole, even for a team like the Giants, the Chiefs held them under 10 points. Really, outside of a field goal, there was really only one Giants offensive drive that was led by the running back that they drafted from Arizona State, Cam Scadaboo, and that dude is a tough tank. I mean, I can't really say I like him. I do remember him in college. I'm pretty sure K-State has played against him, but tough dude. Got to tip your cap to him and his performance, even though I don't think he rushed for really that many yards, but he certainly proved to be a fan favorite, kind of like how the Giants fans really wanted to see Jackson Dart, and they were booing Russell Wilson practically off the field towards the end. But that was really the only offensive drive that the Giants put together. And they definitely had some plays where they were able to move the ball, but thankfully, Russell Wilson was Russell Wilson, and he threw up 2 picks off of passes that he really had no business throwing, just in terms of Chiefs coverage and just, as a lot of people have said in the media, just kind of chucking up a Russell Wilson moonball. But the Chiefs took advantage of that, and I think against a bad team, a lot of people are going to kind of play this like pity card and kind of downplay and be like, oh, well, of course the Chiefs won that game. They should have killed them by 40, but they took care of business at the end of the day. The defense limited the Giants significantly, and I think the big point that I heard someone in KCSN talking about before last week's game is that you had to take away Malik Neighbors, easily their best offensive weapon, probably the best player on the entire team. They limited him, I'm pretty sure, to just 2 catches for 13 yards. He visibly looked frustrated at times and almost couldn't believe some of the passes that Russell Wilson was even throwing, like the interception of Jalen Watson. So the Chiefs defense did their job. They limited Malik Neighbors. Wilson throws 2 picks, held Giants under 10 points. Wrap that up in a nutshell, and the defense just continues to play really, really well. And I think them playing very well against the Eagles 2 weeks ago also was a huge step forward, especially after the struggles and the slower start that they had against the Chargers down in Brazil. And when you think about, I'll get to this a little bit more later, but I think when you consider the way that the Ravens have played so far this season, I mean, they hung 40 on Buffalo. And I can't remember the final score of the Lions and Ravens game, but the Ravens clearly can score points. I don't think that they have as strong of a defense, but I also think that their offense can be limited and stopped as well. And by this point, with an in-conference AFC conference rivalry of their own, the Chiefs and Ravens know each other very well. There are going to be plays that the Chiefs, I anticipate, giving up, just like most Chiefs fans are probably expecting. Lamar Jackson is going to make his share of plays. It's going to be tough to limit Derrick Henry, but the Chiefs have shown that they've done it before. They can do it again, so I'm confident in that. I don't think the Chiefs did, again, they don't really have much of an existent running game right now, but I did think that they had some runs that were showing signs of hope against the Giants. And against the Giants, I know that that's not saying much, but outside of the Giants, front four, their pass rush, which is really the only bright spot and strength that they have on that entire defense, I just think overall, it was good to see the Chiefs able to do, some things, make some progress in some areas. Offense, continuing on defense. Like I said before, I mean, Mahomes, I think I don't know. I guess it depends on what you read or what you're listening to, who you're talking to, but there are definitely some media outlets, some analysts out there, on some of these main, talk shows, ESPN and whatnot. I mean, I think that there are just people who are going to believe that, like, Mahomes is no longer the best quarterback in the league, and Mahomes is not putting up, these gaudy numbers. But I just don't really think it's about that. I don't really care if Mahomes throws 3 touchdown passes a game versus 1. I don't really care. I just want to see the ball punched into the end zone. If we can just run the ball better, if we can get the passing game going and we set up, a 1-yard punch in like we did to Kareem Hunt last week at the Meadowlands, like that's fine. The Chiefs have certainly not put together a full, complete game, like, at all. We're still searching for that. So until that point, probably the biggest sign of progress is that the Chiefs are certainly making adjustments in game. From week to week, I can tell they are building. They have a foundation set. They are building. They are getting better. Those are definitely some real positives that I am pleased with. I don't really care about the stats. Mahomes had 1 touchdown pass to Tyquan Thornton against the Giants. He only passed for, I think, like 224 yards, but no interceptions. Something that Mahomes has struggled with a couple seasons in his career. I'm forgetting which years exactly, and it hasn't always been his fault. Some of it has been, drops by his receivers that were tipped up and were then intercepted. But Mahomes is probably doing the best on the entire offense of really taking care of the ball, managing the game, managing the offense when needed. And he made, I mean, a lot of people have talked about it at this point. He made one of the best plays, hustle effort plays that we will probably see this season. So far, the play that's probably second to that, for the Chiefs at least, was Joshua Simmons chasing down whoever the Eagles' secondary defender was that came away with the interception off the Kelsey drop. But Joshua Simmons saving a touchdown by chasing this guy who was much faster than him all the way down to about midfield. But in the game against the Giants, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was the second occurrence of this. It was a backward pass, and Pacheco, I'm not really sure what he was doing, why he was facing the opposite end zone behind him, and that could have been a scoop and score fumble by the Giants for a touchdown, and Mahomes wouldn't let it happen. He just hustled in there, and instead of just tackling the guy, he straight up went for the ball and took it back. A lot of people have talked about how that game could have turned out much different if Mahomes didn't do what he did there. And if the Giants had scored a touchdown, you're looking at potentially a different game. No one really knows whether, the Chiefs would be 0-3 right now if based on that play, if it went the other way and it was a turning point and, the Chiefs just played a completely worse game going forward. But we have to just be thankful, I think, as Chiefs fans right now that despite some of the struggles, we're pushing through it, and then we're able to find success. We're kind of building a little bit of momentum and slow progress. So I will take it. We talked about the Thornton deep ball. We talked about Butker's kicking struggles. I don't really know what's going on with Butker. I don't know if it's just also a slow, rough start for him. I don't know if it's like a confidence thing. I don't know if it's him maybe starting to show signs of getting a little bit older and maybe past injuries are kind of affecting, his kicks or whatever it is. But hopefully it's just early stuff. Too early on in the season to tell, but hopefully it's just little things that he can clean up. I can't say that I know anywhere near enough about kicking a football and that part of special teams to be able to. I don't know if there's anything going on. I haven't seen anything from the snap or the hold or any other parts of the mechanics. I don't know if it's just a technique mechanic thing with Butker. Hopefully it gets cleaned up soon. I think if we can just go a game, just take it one game at a time where Butker isn't missing any kicks, and if Mahomes and the offense can just continue to put him in, if we can't score touchdowns, if we can at least just get into red zone opportunities where, he could just do his job and they're realistically makeable field goals. I think that's all we can really ask, and the rest is just up to him. And I think we're going to need Butker, and I think Chiefs fans still trust him in clutch situations, but we're definitely going to need his leg come this Sunday, because a game against the Ravens, this is a game that can come down to 3 points or 1 or 2 points. It could come down to a game-winning field goal attempt, really from either side. And just going back to the kicking game and how that kind of played a factor from the Giants' perspective in last week's win, the Giants also did not have their kicker, Graham Gano. To my knowledge, he had an injury. I don't know if this was something leading up to the game or if it was just a pregame injury, something that happened. But I remember them talking on the broadcast, Collinsworth and Mike Tirico, they were talking about something during pregame warmups. He really wasn't able to, I think, kick really most of the game. I'm pretty sure that they had like a punter or someone was doing kickoffs, and Gano really only made the one field goal after the Giants' initial touchdown that brought them to their, only 9 points. But I forget, I think it might have been Collinsworth during the game. Chris Collinsworth said something about how the Giants' offensive mentality without their kicker was pretty much, we're going to be going for it on fourth downs. It's kind of touchdown or bust because the field goal is sort of out of the question. So that definitely helped give the Chiefs a huge advantage. And I certainly recognize that. So while I'm happy that, we got the win, obviously I'm not fully content, and neither are the Chiefs. I think we realize that. It kind of goes without saying. But it's important just to appreciate, what? You take the win, you put it behind you, it's better than a loss, and you move on. But before we move on from week 3 officially, just, I think some, I don't know if they're hot takes, but just, I guess, takes in general and just overarching recap thoughts. The Chiefs are still certainly a championship team, in my opinion. They're still of championship caliber. They're still a Super Bowl contender. I think a lot of people that disagree with that, I think that they just quickly forget that the Chiefs have played in the last 3 Super Bowls, and that's what they're still striving for. I get it. It's a new season, but I certainly don't think it's out of the question that the Chiefs can try to pursue another Super Bowl this year. This is the revenge tour after all. Let's not forget that. this idea of like, an ugly is what the Chiefs did last Sunday in the Meadowlands. And by the way, something I forgot to kind of wrap up a thought earlier. Their very first win on the road at the New York Giants at the Meadowlands at MetLife Stadium in franchise history. I forget what the Giants and Chiefs head-to-head record is, but Giants definitely own it. The Chiefs have beaten the Giants at Arrowhead, but apparently they had never beaten them at the Meadowlands until last Sunday. And even then, it wasn't a smooth sailing game. It wasn't a pretty win. And the games that I've seen them lose at MetLife in recent years, in recent memory, have definitely been pretty ugly. I don't really think that I would even focus on this idea of like an ugly championship team kind of a win. When you compare that to like the offensive struggles the Chiefs have and the concerns there, again, it's still early on in the season. We're about to wrap up September. Things can look drastically different from week to week, month to month. And again, going back to the fact that the Chiefs are doing all of this without their top two wideouts, and they were only anticipating being without one of those guys heading into this season. So they've done, in my opinion, like as really as well of a job, I think, as you can and as you can hope for as a fan through 3 weeks playing two really tough opponents, and one of those being probably the most competitive division rival, and then the other pretty much your top rival right now in this span of Super Bowls the last couple of years, being the Eagles. Is it still kind of concerning, the offensive struggles? Sure, but like I've been saying, they just have to keep pushing through it. For the third week in a row, there have just been, unfortunately, super high emotions on that sideline for the Chiefs. We saw Andy Reid and Travis Kelce get into it on the sideline against the Giants. And this time around, it was not Kelce bumping Andy Reid. It was Andy Reid bumping Kelce. So it was the complete opposite of what we saw in the Super Bowl in Vegas in 2023 when Kelce bumped Andy Reid. I liked seeing Coach Reid kind of check Kelce and sort of put him in his place. I think Kelce, in his presumably final year, I get that he wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to go out on a high note. He wants to get back and get revenge for what happened at the end of last season. But whether it's a matter of Kelce wanting the ball or whether he's frustrated by the offense just not playing well collectively, and guys like Juwan Taylor having, leading the team in penalties and little things not clicking, I don't know what it is, but when things aren't working well, the emotions are just too high. But for whatever reason, it's also seeming to work. It's seeming to kind of light the spark when they need it most and just get them into gear. After halftime, the Chiefs came out not completely a different team, but they certainly looked vastly different and better than in the first half. There's a lot of talk right now about, can the Chiefs defense do what it's done before and carry this team? I don't really care who or what carries the team. I don't care who or what side of the ball carries the team. I mentioned it earlier, and this is really credit to someone on KCSN who kind of threw this phrasing out there, but the Chiefs are trying to just kind of get by, considering this tough schedule to start the season, and just kind of survive and get to basically week 7 when they'll have Rice back. But I've been monitoring the injury report all week and today. We should be getting an update here later today, but there is talk, and I'll talk about this more later, but there is talk that we might have Xavier Worthy back this week against the Ravens. We'll see, in what kind of limited capacity. He's still coming off that dislocated shoulder injury, but they just need to continue to get through, take it one game at a time, and just try their best to slug it out and win these games, no matter how it's going to look. They're playing 3 really tough teams coming up. starting with the Ravens, and then I forget the order, but Lions and Commanders before the Raiders game. You know, whether it's the defense continuing to lock things down, it was a really nice sign finally seeing them also get turnovers against the Giants. But whether it's them and whether it's Mahomes on offense, literally doing everything in his power to keep us from, you know, losing for a third straight week, keeping us in games. I don't really care who carries the team. It could also just kind of be a mix. You know, while Butker is struggling, offense, defense, like we have got to find a better way of being more consistent with the pass rush, turning the ball over and winning the turnover battle, you know, forcing turnovers, just being more disruptive and getting pressure in the backfield on opposing quarterbacks, continuing to stop the run. We're playing some really, really tough running backs here. And I think we just need to continue to buy some time while Mahomes continues to grow and develop the chemistry with guys like Tyquan Thornton, hopefully Hollywood Brown. Kind of segueing, I think, from the Giants to the Ravens game before Rashee Rice makes his return. And he's also probably going to need some time to kind of ramp back up just because he will have been away from the team for, you know, several weeks at that point. Like, I don't think it's just going to be a matter of overnight, the Chiefs are just, everything is solved and fixed once we have Rice and Worthy back. It's still going to take a little bit of time. So that's why collectively, this is a team game. This is a team sport. So it can't just fall on like Mahomes or Chris Jones on that defense. Like, everyone has got to do their part. So I think when you talk about Xavier Worthy's return potentially in this game against the Ravens, it sounds like he's going to be wearing some kind of a harness or a brace for his shoulder. It sounds like it's fair to assume that we can expect a limited snap count or like a pitch count, if you will. I don't think that they would play him if they didn't think that he could, you know, protect himself if needed or take a hit if really needed. But I wonder if he does play this Sunday, if he's going to be used as more of like a decoy or really more so just to kind of get a game under his belt before really coming back in full capacity. But he could also just be used to sort of have a threatening presence. With him out there, the Ravens have to at least pay some attention to him. They might run maybe some safer, smarter routes with him. I don't know if this is going to be a case, but similar to how Mahomes got hurt in 2018 when his kneecap like dislocated and was like on the side of his leg, and then they had to, you know, move it back into place. And that was the last time the Chiefs ran a QB sneak with Mahomes. I hope that they don't shy away from and just think, oh, we can never run any kind of shallow crossers with him and Kelsey or him and someone else out of fear of that happening again. But against the Ravens, do I think that they would put him in that kind of position again? Probably not. Am I a little bit concerned? I'll just go ahead and answer yes. I am a little bit concerned that Worthy, sort of like receivers who get hit over the middle and then they kind of have a fear going forward where anytime they have to run a route over the middle, they're like looking at where they're going instead of paying attention to the pass coming into their hands because they're worried about getting decked over the middle again. I just hope that that doesn't have an impact on like a confidence factor for Worthy, because I think those are one of the routes that he does so well at, and his speed. We can't have a lot of success in some of these shallow crossing routes, but I don't anticipate to see that against the Ravens. Again, we'll see how much he even plays. Like, he might suit up, and who knows if he just kind of barely plays. But even if he's out there just to get the Ravens defense, you know, respect, and maybe he does just kind of some simple like bubble screens or just kind of run some routes just to get back into the swing of things a little bit. But I'm not expecting a big role or anything big out of Xavier Worthy. I think that would be unrealistic for this game against the Ravens. Overall, the Ravens game is going to be another huge test for the Chiefs, and I think both teams find themselves certainly in kind of a similar situation right now, sitting at 1-2. The Chargers being at 3-0. The Chiefs, it would be really nice if they could kind of bridge the gap and get a win, get back to 500. Starting off the season, if you're the Chiefs, starting off the season 0-2, if you were to win 2 games straight, I think that just gives you a huge confidence boost going into tough games against the Lions and the Commanders. The Chiefs have shown that even when they've struggled mightily in some of these games, even the ones that they've lost, the Chiefs actually had chances to win those games. No one has just straight up beat them, destroyed them. It has not been anything like the Super Bowl last year. So I think that's a really good takeaway, is that people are kind of crapping on the Chiefs right now and just being like, yeah, they're not that good, and they're not able to do a lot of things well, and they're struggling, and they don't have their top weapons. And I don't fully agree with that. I think the Chiefs are more in their own way and shooting themselves in the foot, and for lack of better words, kind of sometimes it just kind of looks like they have their heads up their asses. And if they can just help themselves out a little bit, I think we're going to start seeing a difference. And so far, every single week, while yes, there still continue to be some struggles, I think they're actually having a lot more progress and positives each week than it might seem. I think if you really look closely, you will see that I think the pros are kind of outweighing the cons, and it's just, if we can just continue to clean some of those things up. It's not something so severe as like the offensive line can't protect Mahomes at all. Like Kingsley Suamataia, he's actually quietly playing a lot better than I think some people were initially very concerned with, considering when he got benched last year. And like last year's left tackle issue, that was huge. Or in 2023 when guys were just dropping passes, like that was a lot bigger, I think, than some of the problems we have now. It's just, let's clean up the penalties. Let's really focus on the run game. I thought Brashard Smith had a couple of really good plays against the Giants. I would like to see him get more involved. I also think Nico Remillo really could try to get a chance in this offense because he had a nice catch against the Eagles. It's things like that. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. All right, so as we're getting ready to wrap up here, looking ahead to week 4, again, it is Red Friday. Week 4, Sunday afternoon matchup at Arrowhead. Chiefs and Ravens, very familiar with each other. This is Mahomes versus Lamar. I think we kind of know it is what it is at this point. It's going to be very, very tough. Some of the challenges when you play the Ravens are always limiting Lamar Jackson's running mobility, getting outside the pocket. He's obviously a very good runner. Derrick Henry, always tough to stop, even as an aging running back. Just he's a powerful and actually a lot faster than he looks kind of a running back in this league, and he's been great for years. One thing to mention though is even the Ravens and Derrick Henry, they've had some issues with Derrick Henry's ball security recently, so that's something to note. Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions, I'm pretty sure it was last week, is when he punched the ball out there towards the end of the game. So it's not just fumbles. It's Derrick Henry has had timely, costly fumbles at really crucial, critical points late in the game. That happened in Buffalo as well in week 1. While the Chiefs have certainly had their struggles, the Ravens have had theirs as well. Both of these teams find themselves at 1-2. I'm pretty sure the Ravens I want to say they beat like the Browns or something in week 2, but they have lost both of their like really tough games, being the Bills, which they should have won that game, and then the Lions. And from what I was hearing, it sounds like the Lions just kind of went into Baltimore and like kind of pushed them around last week. Yeah, I think the Chiefs just, if they can just try to come out, and they haven't been able to do it yet this season, but if they can try to come out fast, start hot, they'll be playing at home. Both of these teams are very familiar with each other, so that definitely plays a factor. I think from an injury report standpoint, what I was looking at earlier today is while the Chiefs definitely have quite a number of guys on their injury report, I think pretty much all but one were like full or limited participants or started to be full participants towards, the end of this week. Whereas the Ravens, I think they had quite a few guys that were limited or did not even practice yesterday and Thursday. So that could also play a huge factor, just depending on which key players either side has available or not available for this game. And I could be completely wrong about Worthy. If he does in fact return to this game, I personally am just not going to anticipate seeing him like full on ready to just let's unleash him on the Ravens defense like last year to start the season. I think coming back from this injury, I think they are going to want him to take it a little bit slower. And it's still too early on in the season to panic like, oh, we've got to, start going to him right away like 7, 8, 9 times a game. I think it could just be the type of game where we kind of get him back into the swing of things, but don't push the envelope, don't do anything too drastic. I don't want to see him get re-injured or aggravate that shoulder and have to delay his recovery time and have any kind of impacts on him long term this season. I think it's just exciting to think, the possibilities of as he does get healthier and when Rice does come back midway through this season. I think the Chiefs can be a really explosive, efficient, and dangerous offense later on this season. So I'm not throwing all my eggs in one basket this game against the Ravens. Of course, is it a game that we want to win? Yes. Is it as much of a must win or can't lose game? No, because we took care of business and beat the Giants. And when I say take care of business, it wasn't the most prettiest of business, okay? But they did what they needed to do. They got out of there with a win. Against Baltimore, if we were to drop to 1-3, wouldn't be great because then you're kind of looking at the Lions and Commanders games and you're like, man, those are really tough games. It would be nice if we can at least win some of these games. I don't know if we can expect the Chiefs to win every single one of these, but I certainly think that it's possible. Let's just start with one week at a time though. I certainly think that they can beat the Ravens. The Ravens, kind of like the Chiefs, they have something in similar. I think the Ravens, they get in their own way quite a bit. And I think that weakness of theirs is actually far greater than ours. I think the Chiefs get in their own way with things like penalties, with dumb plays like the, what the heck are you doing? Backward pass to Pacheco. Pacheco facing backwards basically on the play. And just the team chemistry and guys kind of getting too emotional arguing until we kind of turn things around. The Ravens really could be like a 2-1 or maybe even the 3-0 team, but they do things to get in their own ways with like letting teams come back, turning the ball over. Just costly like mistakes and self-inflicted errors, I think, is more so the problem that the Ravens are having. For the first time in a while, the Chiefs, being 0-1 to start playing at home this season, I would like to think that coming back home, we're going to have a big advantage with our crowd. I would like to think that that's going to help us have the support we need to, get our first home win of the season. I certainly think the energy was there against Philly. Yeah, Arrowhead's going to need to be rocking. We're going to need that crowd. It would be nice to get a home win. Yeah, I'll just say that much. I mean, it would be nice to get a win at home. It would feel kind of weird if we started off this season 0-2 at home at Arrowhead of all places. All right, let's see. What to watch? Yeah, I mean, can the Chiefs start faster? That's the big question. So far, they have not started fast really at all this season. Probably the best first half that they've had was against the Eagles by far, and that's still not even really saying much. I mean, I think they were, tied at 10 at halftime in that game, but they did score a touchdown in the first half. They did play better defense in the first half. All things considered, going up against a really tough Eagles team, I think they started just about as well as they could have in that game. But again, I think if the Chiefs are doing all the right things and they're playing perfect football, there's not many teams out there that can really stop them if they're firing on all cylinders and everything's clicking. All right, so before we wrap up, before we finish this episode 3, week 3 recap and week 4 preview, I just want to finish off by saying that I think the bottom line here is when you flip the page from week 3 to week 4, the Chiefs starting off the season 0-2, since February being on a 3-game losing streak and going into the Meadowlands and winning that game, despite how it looked, at least in the first half, better finish in the second half, on a more positive note. They didn't end that game in a nerve-wracking way for the fans. It wasn't a tight finish against a bad team. They really took care of business there at the end, and it was actually pretty laughable watching Russell Wilson, just some of the decisions and throws that he was making there to finish off the game. But I think the biggest question here is, for the Chiefs, is this a turning point? And not to say that we're just going to win every game from here on out, but is this a turning point of them starting to really make some strides progress-wise and build some momentum, continuing to build week after week? Is this a turning point where maybe they play a much better all-around game as an entire team against the Ravens? And maybe this can really build into some of the tough games that they have coming up after that point. Or was this just kind of a fool's gold and they, kind of won a sloppy-ish game against the Giants, and then they're kind of back to square one against the Ravens, and maybe we have a similar outcome and another loss, just like against the Chargers and Eagles. I'm really hoping that's not the case. I think even though it's been like a walk through the mud the first couple of weeks, I just think that they're in a place where I think that they can continue to show that some of these pros are slowly outweighing the cons and some of the, strengths versus weaknesses. The Ravens are going to be, a tough test for that. I believe the Chiefs can beat the Ravens this week. It's always tough. It's going to be tough. It's always tough against them, but it's this is a game that either side can win. I mean, they're both pretty evenly matched teams. They're going through some similar struggles right now, same record heading into week 4. I think if anything has shown over the last several years that a lot of the top teams in the AFC, I mean, the identity sometimes is something that can really change from month to month, and these two teams will have to see, where are we at, where are they at come, December, January. And, even though the Bills are undefeated so far this season, I mean, hot, fast starts don't always mean everything or equate or translate into, the ultimate goal. So I think that's been pretty clear. Okay, that is going to do it for episode 3 of Win or Lose Chiefs News with Alex Liu. This is my podcast edition. I will leave my blog link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, comment, share, follow me on Instagram. Again, I am Alex Liu with ALU2 Productions. This is my YouTube channel where I am featuring and uploading my weekly or aiming to be weekly podcast covering each Chiefs game of the 2025 season and hopefully beyond. Again, Win or Lose Chiefs News started last season, the 2024 season, as a blog on WordPress. I discuss the Chiefs, whether we win or lose a game, and this is the podcast edition, so thank you so much. Please share, tell all your family and friends about it. Whether you're a Chiefs fan or not, I mean, hopefully you're a Chiefs fan if you're listening to this. I don't really cover, too much else of the NFL, but Chiefs fans, this is also a place to come if you are, not local to Kansas City, if you are a out of town, out of market fan like myself. I am originally from Kansas City, but I have lived most of my life on the East Coast, moved around a couple of times as a kid, and I'm based in the DC, Metro Virginia, DMV area, and I am everything, all things Kansas City, Chiefs, Royals, Kansas State, Wildcats, football and basketball. That's going to do it. Hopefully I'll try to be back next week, and hopefully coming to you next week after a Chiefs win over the Ravens. Please do me another huge favor and check out the rest of my channel on ALU2 Productions. I make all kinds of videos. Recently, one of my niches has definitely become gaming content, but I do make other videos, and I am an aspiring videographer, video editor, content creator, and overall filmmaker, trying to make this a full-time career one day. So thank you so much, and go Chiefs. We will see you next time. Thanks.